This video is over part of the topic 7 practice questions. So we're looking at absolute change comparisons for this video. So this is practice number 1 through 3. So starting with a refrigerator costs $1,149 at Home Depot, $1,219 at Lowe's. Finding the absolute change in price. It's not specifying one direction or the other. It's just going to be 1219 minus 1149, which is 70. Now, if it said compare Home Depot to Lowe's using absolute change, or it said compare Lowe's to Home Depot, then it's asking for a specific direction. So let's look at what the sentences would look like for this comparison to see which one would go with each of those. So I can write a sentence and I can say the fridge costs $70 less at Home Depot than at Lowe's. So notice here when I say Home Depot first and then Lowe's, Home Depot then Lowe's, it's less. So to say Home Depot is less than Lowe's. The sort of core of that sentence is Home Depot is 70 less than Lowe's. So when it asks compare Home Depot to Lowe's, that's the order that you would say it in. Home Depot is, and so then you just look at the two numbers. Home Depot is less than Lowe's. Then for that, you would give the answer of what's the absolute change as negative 70. Versus, we could say Lowe's is $70 more than Home Depot. Then if we're doing Lowe's to Home Depot, it would just be the positive 70. And again, you could say something like not Lowe's charges $70 more than Home Depot for the same refrigerator. And these sentences, there's all sorts of different ways that you could state this information. So again, like the key information is these parts here and the dollars as well. And then, how you put that into a sentence is up to you, but you will potentially have test questions that ask you to write sentences as well as the homework activity questions. Number 2, we have the population of Warsaw. In 1990, it was 11,239. In 2023, it was 16,097. So here, when we're looking at the absolute change for a single quantity changing over time, it's either an increase or a decrease. In this case, it's an increase, so the absolute change is positive. If you're just asked for the absolute change value, if it's a decrease, it would potentially be given as a negative number. But I'm taking either way, subtracting 16,097 minus 11,239. So let me throw that into a calculator. And it comes out 4858. Writing in a sentence, what does that number tell me about Warsaw? So I'm not saying the absolute change is 4858. I want to say, what does this tell me about Warsaw? It tells me that Warsaw grew by 4,858 people from 1990 to 2023. Again, lots of different ways that could be said. I might say Warsaw's population increased by almost 5,000 people since 1990. When you're putting into a sentence, you can sort of round off to a more round number that's easier to understand as long as it's reasonably close, and you throw in some sort of number almost about just over, something that indicates that it's been rounded off, and that here by saying almost 5,000 is also a hint that like it's not just rounded to 5,000, but it rounded up to 5,000. The different things you can do with the words there. And then number 3, looking at Gary from the 90s to 2020, 110,000 people in the 90s, 70,000 in 2020. So here we have a decrease in population. So the absolute change would be expressed probably as a negative number. Just watch for what Alex asks for on that. It may or may not want the negative. But this would be 110,000 minus 70,000, or technically to get the negative, you take the new value minus the old value. So 70,000 being the newer minus 110,000 gives the negative. But either way, it comes out 40,000. When you're putting it into a sentence, you don't use the negative sign. You use a word to indicate that. So Gary, Gary lost 40,000 people in 30 years. Or something like since 1990, Gary has seen a population decrease of 40,000 people. Again, lots of variations on how you might put that information into a sentence, but you're not saying the absolute change is 40,000. You're not saying anything about the calculation. You've already done the calculation and given the answer. So the sentence is saying, what does that result tell me about Gary, Indiana?